And one thing they liked about us was our strategy. You know, when we're trying to get people the right properties, Alex, and I know you've probably gone through this, that sometimes popular doesn't make the most sense. You know, when people think about Florida, they think, oh, well, there's Tampa, Orlando, and Miami, and that's all of Florida. There's nothing else to it. And look, those are great areas. I have friends and relatives in those areas. But for us, in the last few years, the buy-in pricing, the land prices have been too high. We felt it to be too risky because we're always looking at that median value. You know, and when we're in Jacksonville and the median value is $300,000 with good family income, good rents, but Miami is 2.5 times that, we watch those things.
Welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast, the show where we teach you how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want.
Doctor.
Now, here's your host, Dr. Alex Schloe.
Did you know that 85% of the quality time that you spend with your kids is in the first 18 summers? Blows my mind, and it's crazy to think about. This episode of the Physicians and Properties Podcast is incredible. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Alex Schloe, and I'm so honored today to have Jim Sheils on the podcast. Jim is an absolutely incredible real estate investor, but most importantly, he's an incredible father and an amazing husband. Jim and his wife, Jamie, are just amazing, and they wrote a book called The Family Board Meeting about 18 summers, and essentially you have 8 summers with your kids, which is 85% of the quality time that you have with your kids. Crazy to think about and important to realize that we have to maximize that time that we have. In this podcast, we talk a lot about Jim's real estate journey, the realization that he had after Steve Jobs passed away that what's most important is not business, it's family, it's relationships. And that led to him writing his best-selling book. Jim's personal experience balancing real estate and investing with family life, super inspirational. This is a great episode for our physicians who are parents or ones who think they want to be parents, and super important for entrepreneurs and investors. So without any further ado, let's get started with this really important and amazing episode with Jim Sheils. Jim Sheils, welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast. I'm so glad to have you on the podcast tonight. Thank you for staying up late in sunny St. Augustine, Florida. I really appreciate it, and being patient with our technology woes over here in Colorado Springs. So I appreciate it. Thanks for the time, and really looking forward to the discussion tonight.
Yeah, me too, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, for folks who don't know who you are, Jim, do you mind telling them a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Name's Jim Sheils. I've been a real estate investor for about 25 years, partner in a building company that builds rental properties for investors. I work with a lot of professionals, doctors, and I also have a family education business with my wife that includes a Wall Street Journal best-selling book about family life and how to make sure your career doesn't destroy it and its family stays strong while you're building it.
That's great. Yeah, definitely want to hit the book. If super timely to hear this, especially as we're going into Christmas, and something that I know doctors struggle a lot with is like, hey, how do I balance a busy medical practice, maybe some side gigs, and trying to be a present father or present mother? And it's difficult to do. And you guys do a really good job at explaining and inspiring folks to realize like, hey, it's 18 summers and this is what's most important, and making sure to put that first. Before we get into that, I do want to hit a bit about your real estate journey, because you've had a pretty incredible run over the last 25 years. Do you mind telling folks how you got into real estate, why you got into real estate, and we'll just kind of pick that apart and hit some key points along the way?
Yeah, I always wanted to do something on my own. And honestly, that first real estate class I took 26 years ago, I remember sitting in it and people had said I had been crazy to pay so much money to go learn from this investor who had a great track record. And I remember just thinking at that young age, in my early 20s, if I could get my real estate in place, I could get to the good things, the important things. That's what it was all about for me. It just seemed like real estate was the vehicle I understood. I grew up in North Jersey, just near Wall Street. I had no interest in that world. It seemed very unsure. Retirement could be capable and then incapable for people within a year. You know, I saw growing up, and I said, what's more steady? What has more of a track record? And I just started to read in my early 20s that 7 out of 10 millionaires in the US have made their money in real estate. And it's actually gone up since then. And I like those odds. And so at first I started buying, fixing, and reselling homes. And over the last 2 decades evolved from doing bulk foreclosures into my most recent and successful model, which is all new construction rental property. That's all I do. I work with individuals, a lot of medical professionals, a lot of successful business owners that are looking to own property without the headaches. And we also work with some of the bigger groups as well. But our thing, Alex, is we only do new construction, which is a big change from a guy who was Mr. Rehabber for many years. But it's been really rewarding and sets a lot of free time aside for me, my wife, my 5 children, things my parents could never do. And especially with your community, obviously, I have a lot of doctor friends that I've worked with and have achieved with. It's nice to see because doctors, well, they're hunted after a lot. And unless you have doctor friends, you don't know, oh, hey, we have insurance and we have other things. And a lot of people just don't see that. It's nice to see more and more doctors taking advantage of some real proven assets that they normally wouldn't. And yeah, it's been a great ride, and I love the people we work with.
That's awesome, Jim. I love that. And yeah, new construction is something we haven't talked too much on the podcast. And it sounds like you wide breadth of knowledge from the fix and flip days to now new construction. What do you like about new construction? Why have you guys decided to pivot more towards new construction?
Well, new construction, let me tell you a couple of things. We're able to get into better areas and better properties. When you were doing the fixer-uppers, you were kind of, only stuck to certain areas that made sense. And the new construction, we've been able to go into better areas that are more poised for growth. The amount of headaches has gone down dramatically. Our maintenance and repairs have plummeted. Plummeted from the old model of rehabbing houses from the 1950s or 60s. And I own those, but I just know that, after a few years, my maintenance and repairs are much more. An interesting one as well, Alex, was the tenancy timing. We went from having a tenant for an average of about 30 months. The average tenant was staying over 3 years. And when you look at that, these are all things that are good. When we looked at the long-term growth, the rental growth, the value growth, it was so much more successful than our older model. And we've done thousands of both. And so being able to look at them, I'm going, okay, for myself, because I want to buy back my time the same way I do for my clients. My way of thinking years ago was very different. Actually, my wife and I wrote a second book on this. And I used to own way more properties personally. And today I own way less of better quality, yet I have more equity, more cash flow than I ever have in my life from them. So that's what I like about new construction. A lot of doctors or professionals or business people think, okay, I want to get real estate, but I have to mount up a ton of properties for it to create some sort of retirement income or secondary income. That's just not true. I believe with new construction and such, whether it's with us or someone else, you can look longer term and you can own less of better quality and get better results with less time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You're cutting down so many expenditures without having to save as much for CapEx and maintenance and repairs, which just destroy your cash flow sometimes. We just put a new roof on one of our houses in Florida, and there goes the cash flow for 9 months out of the year. Yeah. And so those things happen. And so new construction helps to mitigate that risk. And I love that too. Like you mentioned, hey, you're kind of controlling the location because you're building it where the demand is and where you want. And you're going to probably get better tenants. You're definitely getting tenants that last for longer. And you're able to cash flow a bit more. And I'm sure kind of where the market has been, probably in the volume of deals that you do, probably able to get some pretty good discounts in terms of new construction costs and so forth as well, I would imagine.
We've been very lucky. In the beginning of 2020, we really took a risk and doubled, tripled, quadrupled down into our land positions, which was a good thing to do. We said this crazy pandemic thing is either going to be really good for real estate or really bad. We said we're going to buy like it's going to be really good, and the land costs were phenomenal then. So we don't have a shortage of land as a builder. A lot of builders, the problem is they don't have any buildable lots, and now they're trying to buy in at today's prices. Well, we were lucky to buy in almost 5 years ago. We have over 5,000 lots that we're building out. And another thing that is good is a lot of people, when you hear about new construction, especially in what we do, like new construction turnkey or build to rent, there's a lot of terms. Most of the people only do single family homes. And I like single family homes. I own single family homes. But part of our recipe for success is also duplexes and quad communities. So you can own quads because now this is residential real estate. We can still get that great financing, which is a key component right now to make or break deals. And so that can also get them more bang for their buck if they choose to go into these, proven residential strategies as well.
Yeah, that's great. And for folks who are wondering why that's a good idea, economies of scale is the big one. I mean, you can get multiple units for probably close to the same price, and it's protective. Hey, if one tenant leaves and you have a fourplex, then you still have three tenants who are still paying, which is great.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's a great way to do it. That is awesome and a great strategy. Are you predominantly building in Florida, or are you guys doing this all over the United States, or what's your market of choice?
We're in Florida predominantly, but we've now gone into Texas and Tennessee and the Carolinas. About 2 years ago, we were partially acquired by a large group called Sumitomo Forestry. If you look up Sumitomo, they're going to come up. They're a large conglomerate out of Japan. Warren Buffett is very heavily invested in one of their other phases, and they've 330 years old. They built 17,000 homes worldwide. We had been looking for a partner to help expand our business. And they came in 2 years ago, liked us, bought into a piece of our company. They paid off all of our bank debt. So as a builder, we are one of few builders of our size with no debt. And obviously that's a very good thing for health, being able to bond projects. And they've been able to set us up in all of these additional markets, but also, it's been good for our suppliers, for our connection when you're stepping into such a powerhouse, and it's been exciting. And one thing they liked about us was our strategy. When we're trying to get people the right properties, Alex, and I know you've probably gone through this, that sometimes popular doesn't make the most sense. When people think about Florida, they think, oh, well, there's Tampa, Orlando, and Miami, and that's all of Florida. There's nothing else to it. And look, those are great areas. I have friends and relatives in those areas. But for us, in the last few years, the buy-in pricing, the land prices have been too high. We felt it to be too risky because we're always looking at that median value, and when we're in Jacksonville and the median value is 300,000 with good family income, good rents, but Miami is 2.5 times that. We watch those things. So that's been a great part of having Sumitomo with us for not only their research, but their support. And that's allowing us to go into multiple states with not only our building operations, but we're one of few builders too, Alex, that has their own in-house financing. So one of the keys we found in the last 2 years, and I know we're all going through it, is, golly, I wish I could have had the interest rates I was locking in at before June of 2022. What we actually do, luckily, since we have a really healthy balance sheet, we're able to go into banks. We work with 2 banks now, and we buy large tranches of mortgage money. It's called a builder forward commitment. We pay for this money up front, and then we're allowed to use this financing on projects we're personally building, on homes we're personally building. And we're locking our clients in right now down as low as 3.75%. And that's not some teaser rate for a year or two. That's either 10-year fixed, 30-year AM, or 30-year AM, 30-year fixed, depending on what you want to do. And that alone, as you know, that can make or break someone having positive cash flow right off the bat. We're having to go to, the normal rates today of 7.5. And so that's one of the big components. And I encourage for anyone out there, whether you're coming to Florida to see us or working with someone, look to see, do the builders have some sort of special incentivized mortgage programs? Because sometimes they can do what we do, and you can take advantage of these lower rates that we pay the buy down, not the investor.
That's amazing. Wow. What was it like? Because we're hitting a place in our business now where we need to bring on partners or we need to expand the team. What was it like as you were kind of growing throughout your real estate journey and you realized, hey, it's time for me to start hiring. It's time for me to start scaling, delegating and elevating these things. What was that process like for you, Jim?
Yeah, it's quite you always want to operate like you're a 2 or 3 person powerhouse, little entrepreneurial, go for the gusto. But what I've learned is what you have to do is you have to surround yourself with really good people, continually be firing yourself in things that you are not the best at and shouldn't be doing. And, and the old Gary Keller, the one thing, what is the one thing you really got to be given focus on? That's super important. And if you're going into bigger, let's say, Physician and Properties podcast and organization is taking off, and man, there's a lot of people looking to get more involved with you and to grow it to the next level. The thing I would encourage, and this was my partner who really handled it, him and his father who founded the company, and then I joined as a partner. But what I found was we had a lot of people approaching us to want to buy in or invest with us in the company itself. And they weren't really people that you got a feeling were going to support you in the long term. There's a lot of reputation out there of people buy into a business and kind of rip it up and choke it for everything it's got, and it kind of falls apart. I've heard some really sad stories of friends selling successful companies and there's nothing against them, but certain equity groups or private equity groups and such, and There can be good ones, there can be bad ones. But what we found, and this is, if you're about to have someone maybe buy into a piece of your business or your practice, and they've done this before, well, ask for references. Who's done this before? Because here's what we found. We had other people, we asked this from other potential people looking, and man, they didn't have nice things to say. Now with the people at Sumitomo, this was interesting. A lot of the partial owners had, a 2 or 3 year earn out for if they wanted to step out. But the funny thing was, Alex, a lot of these guys were still there 10, 12, 14, 16 years later. And they said, why would we leave now? We're enjoying it so much. A lot of the pressure has been taken off by bringing in a good partner. And so that's a good sign. If someone's looking to buy into your business, I'd get some references. Who have they done this with before and see what's happened? And I don't know if that's oversimplistic, but it was diverse.
Yeah, that's great advice. And the culture that they created there and the business that they created there is so important for those partners to stay. Yeah, I've heard that advice too when you're looking for a new tenant. Like, don't call their current landlord because that current landlord may just want to get rid of them. So I'll tell you whatever. Exactly. Yeah. Call the landlord before that. And that's some good advice for folks who are looking for new tenants. But yeah, that's awesome. I really appreciate that, Jim. It's fun for me to have the podcast and get to pick the brains of folks who have done, so much. And one thing that I love about what you're doing is always putting your family first. And, that's something that I've strived to do. I, apologize for you when we got on this podcast for being late because I wanted to make sure I was putting my son Jack to bed, and I try and do that every night. And there's just things that are so important, and family is definitely that. So I would love to kind of transition, if you don't mind, to the family board meeting. And where did that come about? What is the family board meeting for folks who are wondering?
Yeah, I mean, the book came about from something I never even wanted to write, but I was pushed to write it because I started to share it in different business groups, our family and what we were doing. And it got quite an emotional stir and interest. And so it started unintentionally. But now it's grown into a pretty well-known family education company working with entrepreneurs, professionals to make sure you don't fail at home while you're succeeding in business or your practice or venture. And so our book is about simple rhythms that will help keep your family life together. There's one really popular one that's used by about 300,000 families now with their children. And then my wife and I's own kind of spin on keeping our relationship strong with a well-known concept. We put a little bit of a twist on it of date night. And we call it date night with a question. So those are really the foundation. We do a lot of other work with families and organizations, but our book is a great starting point to start to put together a couple cardinal principles that I learned. And the more I started to share them, it was almost like when the personal trainer says to you, okay, you need to diet and exercise. And if you're not willing to do those two things, it's going to be a tough uphill battle, right? I try to get to those same core principles for family life. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that. And we talk about those in the book.
That's great. Did you have a point in your entrepreneurial journey where you felt like, hey, maybe I'm not being the best father that I could be or the best husband that I could be that then led to this? Or was that something that was always a big priority for you and kind of easy to navigate?
I'll tell you what happened. In 2011, I was sent an article from someone close to me about a guy named Walter Isaacson. And Walter Isaacson, his claim to fame was he was Steve Jobs' biographer. And it was a really interesting read, this article, because he was being interviewed by Time magazine a few days after Steve Jobs passed away. And the article really took me back. And it said Steve Jobs spent his final days surrounded by close family and used the opportunity for final interviews to explain to his wife and children why he wasn't there for them. And Steve Jobs going on to say, I wanted them to know who I was. I wasn't always there for them. And the biographer stopped him, according to the article, and said, Steve, are you glad you had a family? Are you glad you had children? Which is a really tough question, especially in a moment like that. But supposedly Steve fired right back and he said, it's 10,000 times better than anything I've ever done. And that's Steve Jobs. And this hit me. And what was interesting for me to hear that at the time, Alex, I was watching the news. Steve had just passed away. You probably remember it. There was candlelight vigils all over and murals being painted and unbelievable stories of his entrepreneurial adventures, which I looked up to. But no one was really talking about this. And I had read a quote too that, a man receives extreme clarity, a person receives extreme clarity at the end of their life. And if that's true, Steve Jobs just left me some important clues. And when I got this, it was a time in my life where I really needed to hear this We were, back into a driver's position with our real estate investment company, but we had, come near bankruptcy in the meltdown. I mean, that was the worst real estate meltdown in 100 years. It was extremely stressful. We were doing pretty good again, but still licking our wounds and our stitches. But I'm running 2 businesses. I have 2 adopted sons and we're having miscarriages. So I'm in the middle of running, we now have 5 children, but, we're growing our family from 2 to 5 children, with miscarriages along the way. And, luckily we have a blend of adoptive and biological children now, but, it was very hard on my wife. So we're going through that. And at that same time, I think it was about the day before I got this article, I had just received notice from the Mayo Clinic that I'd been approved to donate a kidney to my father.
Wow.
And so all I can say to you is all of these things hit at once, Alex. And I think you just get put to the point of critical where you can't look at things the same. And so it just really pushed my curiosity and my commitment to be there for my family. And that was a big catalyst for me. Like, how do I make sure I don't want to be a stranger at home? In fact, I want to be famous at home. I want to be a leader in my industry, but I just want to be famous at home. And what does that really look like to be truly famous in your own home? And that's where our book was born out of, and kind of the talks of why a lot of people bring me around. They're like, you're a real estate investor that talks about family. This is very odd, but tell me more.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that story, Jim. Do you feel like you've probably been more successful in real estate because you've really realized what the priorities are, which is family, and so you figured out how to balance that and continue to grow? Or do you feel like, and it may be difficult to say, but do you feel like if you just put your nose to the grindstone, that you would be as successful as you are?
I believe that equity comes in many forms. And could there have been a chance where I had more financial gain? Maybe. If I wanted to sacrifice nights, weekends, holidays, and I watched guys do it, just burn the midnight oil. There was a mentor I remember years ago. He would say, put your head down for the next 5 or 10 years. Your family will understand. That was I think that's horrible advice, at least for me. Yeah. That's just horrible advice for me, because again, I was taught that 18 summers, the average person will spend, almost 85% of the quality time they ever have with their child by the end of the 18th summer. So, you do those first 18 right, I think you can expand that time and get more time. But there is if I've learned any word working with thousands of families now, it's regret. And I didn't want that regret. So I could have, Alex, but also this is where the trade-off, still doing pretty well, and partner in a big company and have my own family education company. And so possibly the midnight oil and say, I'm just going to, again, like I said, sacrifice everything else. But then what about those 6-week RV adventures? What about, living in Costa Rica for 4 months at a time? Or what about, being able to donate a kidney to my father? I was the only one with the financial resource and the ability of rest to be able, to do that. If a friend of mine is sick, like I just lost a very good friend to pipe cancer, I was able to fly to him 5 times this year and spend time with him. It's about the how, you know what I mean? And the way I've built it, I have financial resource for the how. If I want to do that long RV adventure, I want to live in Costa Rica a few months out of the year. I want to be there for my friends. I want to go to the orphanage we support down in Guatemala. I can do that. I'm not tied to something. And so hopefully I'm making some sense here, but I find all those things I named have a major amount of equity for me. I still, my office right here, we have a big, nice office. I like to work out of my little surf shack office here, and I'm 4 seconds from the ocean and 5 seconds from my family. So again, these are the things that may have down certain type of financial resource, maybe if I went to midnight oil, but all of those others would have gone away.
Yeah, that's a great answer. That's exactly what I was hoping you were going to say was, it doesn't really matter. And I think about, I've said this multiple times on the podcast that the only people who are going to remember that you stayed in the clinic late or you stayed in the hospital late is going to be your family. It's not going to be the patients. It's not going to be leadership. Ultimately, no one is going to care except for your family. And so if you can live with that, that's fine. But there's always going to be more patients to see. There's always going to be more notes to write. There's always going to be more busy work to do. But you're exactly right. 85% 85% of that time is gone in 18 summers. I want to spend as much of that time as I can with my family and with my kids. And I realize that like as a physician, it's really easy to do more. And every time I'm saying yes to something, I'm saying no to my family. And so I've been really trying to process and think through all of this. Right now, I'm in this kind of cool inflection period of I'm separating from the Air Force in June. And we've been really lucky with real estate and with our businesses that now we're in a good financial position where we could take a step back and we could go live in Costa Rica for 4 months if we wanted to and financially be able to do that. And that's because we put in the work. And I have an incredible wife who is very understanding and very supportive. And I've grown so much further because of her. But those priorities are there. And we just did a 6-week camping trip out to Yosemite. And we got some paternity leave. It was amazing. And so, and I look back on this last year and I think about what were the happiest moments that I've had in 2024. All of them are with my family. And the best 6 weeks of my entire time was going on that camping trip. So sorry, 4 weeks. I said 6, but I apologize. It was 4 weeks. And that was the best 4 weeks I had.
Next one 6 for you. So
exactly. Right? Yeah. Just extended by 2 weeks every year.
I think too, I always feel for my doctor friends, and I don't know how much it weighs on you, but you guys worked hard to get with what you're doing. It's held in a high regard, but it also puts pressure on you guys. And a lot of people don't even talk about the Hippocratic Oath either. I mean, I know a lot of doctor friends that, they're really good people and they take that seriously. So it almost, there's like a pull. You're like, well, I've given myself to this and I have to be there. But then there's the balance of family. But then also like, what I think of you, and I smiled big when you said you took the 4-week trip, I was going to sarcastically say, but Alex, you could have opened that second practice. And you're like, oh, but hold on, now I'm kind of missing the point and the balance and the equilibrium. Do you see? So I feel for my doctor friends because I think you guys get pulled in 2 different directions, family and a lot of my doctor friends, that weighs on them, the Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah, it really does. And it's an incredible privilege. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to care for folks, on what for many of them is their worst day. It's tough. It's a hard balance. And I think I realize when I'm 6 feet under, the people that I want there, that I want to realize and look back and be like, hey, he was a really good dad, a good doctor, but the people that are going to be there is going to be my family. I don't suspect a lot of patients are going to be there at my funeral. And so kind of reverse engineering what I want that to look like and what I want people to say at my funeral has been really helpful and kind of really eye-opening from that perspective. A little morbid, but it's just helpful to think about of like, hey, what really matters most?
I've had too many friends now leave too suddenly. And so you can either take that as, oh, that's fear, I'm not going to pay attention, or that's just realization and appreciation for the time we've got. Yeah. And so I think it's good to look at those things. And I think it's good to always be self-checking. So the one thing I can say is people were like, well, what's your advice? I said, my advice is there's no perfect family. And if you're expecting me, if I'm brought in to teach, I said, if you wanted me to teach how to perfect family, I have no clue how to do it. I couldn't even fake that. We have, setbacks, troubles, grumpy teens, but again, family life's not about perfection. It's about bridging imperfections and then just enjoying the time we have together. And when you take that word perfect out of the equation, it's like there's just this, and things seem to go better because I need to have the perfect marriage. I need to have the perfect family life. It's not about perfection. It never has been. And so the fact that if we take that off, but also someone like you is saying to me, I'm always looking at it, I'm always checking. I don't know about you, but I grew up with some wild people. And the ones that went into recovery were the guys who were always like, nah, I don't have a problem. No, I'm fine. For me, even though like alcohol wise, I'm not a big drinker at all. I was always like, no, this could be me. I could have a problem. I just was always, and I think that's a good accountability. And I'm always trying to give myself credit, but also hold myself accountable. Alex, and could I have done that better? Could I have been more engaged with my kids right there? Could I have been more patient? And it's when you keep doing that, I think you keep a good trajectory moving forward.
Yeah, I think if you keep doing that, you keep learning how to be a better parent and you keep growing. And that's something I've been, really trying hard this year to just be more patient. At 4-year-old, my 4-year-old Jack is exactly like me. He knows the exact buttons to push. I mean, he's just my little mini me. So he knows how to like get under dad's skin. And I I keep telling myself, be patient and take time to meet him where he's at and understand like what he's going through. He's 4 years old in this big world and all these emotions and all these things are happening. And I feel like a lot of times I'm putting a lot of pressure on him or trying to push him right now to be the son that I want him to be in 18 years. And that's not the case. We got time to work on that. And so that's been something I've been learning of like, hey, how can I be patient? How can I meet him where he is and just be there for him? And I think the big thing is just, especially in young kids, like they just want quality time. Like all he wants to do is play with me. And so I deserve to play with him when I can, as much as I can. And so when I get home, I take the phone, I put it on the kitchen counter. I don't touch it till he goes to bed because there's nothing on that phone that's more important than Jack and my family. And so that's been a big game changer for me lately. I was thinking about too, right before bed, we've started kind of incorporating some habits. I just recently read Habits of the Household, which is a great book as well in the parenting realm. And Jack and I like kind of came up with a little mantra we say each night. We just started doing it. And so I'll say, it's basically, you are strong, you are smart, you are loved by Jesus and your family. And so I'll say, you are, and he'll go strong. And I'll say, you are, and he'll say smart. And then you are, and he'll say loved. And tonight he said that. And then at the end, he's just like, I love Jesus. It was so cute. And I'm like, dude, this is a 4-year-old kid. And so I think there's those things that, taking the time to do that really set that foundation. And I know that was a bit of a tangent, but I think that podcast is a good way
it's what people want to hear because I got to tell you, there's so many events that I can go to up the response rate of your practice. How do you, engage the marketing? How do you find the new hires for this? There's not a lot out there for entrepreneurs and professionals. Well, how do I successfully build my business while also succeeding at home? There's just not a lot out there for it. And so it's something though you do have to learn. It's like, I think it's as valuable as learning how to swim if you're living on an island. And again, the problem is we're all so busy and it was never put on the forefront. I mean, even some of like my most highly educated friends, doctors, or said, did you ever have to take a whole thing on relationships and family? Like, no, like that was never given our focus. Right. And so now we're all playing catch up.
Yeah. And no real estate investing education or financial education. There's lots that we didn't learn. Yeah. We learned a lot about medicine. We did not learn a lot about some other things that are really important. That's awesome. Well, Jim, I want to be respectful of your time. As we're wrapping things up, are there a couple practical steps for folks who are listening that you would recommend or some advice for physicians who invest but also feel overwhelmed in personal and professional demands? Are there a couple tips that you have for them?
I tell you what, I mean, just in the show notes, I can get people a free digital copy of our book. It's bestselling USA Today. It's like $22.95 on Barnes and Nobles or whatever. We'll get it to them for free. They can read that if they want it. So you can give that to them. It's our story, a lot of our client stories. And what I can tell you with real estate is don't listen to the stories that are coming from people that have never been involved in it. Try to make sure you're just like, I don't want to go to someone's going to operate on my knee. I want someone who's really good orthopedic surgeon on my knee. Same thing with real estate. Make sure you're taking advice from people who are actually in the trenches doing it. And remember, own less of better quality. Just own less of better quality. That is the biggest lesson where I could have saved so much time and effort. You don't need a ton of properties. I was going to be in the 100 house club. Then I hit the 200 house club and it was terrible. And now I own a lot less of better quality with less leverage. And I'm looking at generational wealth now. And you can do the same. You don't have to do a ton. It doesn't have to become a second or third job if you pick the right types of properties and systems. On the family side of things for physicians, and I've worked with a lot of my physician friends in some different doctor investing groups for not only real estate, but family discussion. First and foremost, stop beating yourself up. If, like I said, hold yourself accountable. Say, how could I do it? But if you're always, I missed this, I didn't do that, you're always going to be guilty, depressed, and then start to become bitter. Yes, hold yourself accountable, but don't keep beating yourself up. It's like we're our own worst critic, especially with our family. And a lot of that, again, Alex, comes from, but I wanted to have the perfect family. Just from here to today forward, try to remove that word perfect and say, you know what, we're going to bridge our imperfections and enjoy the time we have together. See if that feels better. See where you're at. And with doing that, I'm going to give you two last things, and you already hit on them. Get one-on-one with each person in your family on a rhythmic schedule. Separate the parts. It will strengthen the whole. And when you do that, we like to do tech fasting. From some of my adventures on some of my holidays, on one-on-one time with my wife, which date night we don't miss. We can't go in that today, maybe another episode, because it's got some twists to it. The quarterly days that I spend with each one of my children, you cannot get me. My phone is off. Or if it's on airplane mode so I can snap a few pictures, but that's it. So, one-on-one time is such an unbelievable secret sauce that so many people don't do. And turning off the phone, like you said, is a magic way. And the more you do it, the more you realize, gosh, I'm really glued to this thing a lot more, checking a lot more than I thought. So that's a great starting point. It's not going to get you all the way there, but it'll get you out the gates pretty well.
That's great. And yeah, this is all about removing perfect and just getting a little bit better. And those are some great ways to get a bit better and keep going from there. Oh, Jim, I could talk to you all night. If folks want to reach out to you, where can they do that? Or where can they find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, just go to jjplay.com. That'll talk about some of our, family principles that we've shared now all over the world, our best-selling book, our real estate book, and then about our building company that, builds investment properties for investors. So JJ Playbook's a great starting point. You get some free downloads there. I'll make sure, Alex, you get a link to the free download of the book if anyone wants that. And that's a great way to start. Find us.
That'd be great. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Jim, for your time. Really appreciate it. And again, thanks for staying up late.
No problem.
Awesome. With that, it's been Jim Sheils and Dr. Alex Schloe with another episode of the Physicians and Properties Podcast. Signing off. Hey, real quick, if you're still listening to this, I'm assuming you got value from it. So I need your help specifically. My 2-year vision with this podcast is to help 100,000 physicians learn how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want. There are 2 main ways that a podcast grows. One is through ratings and reviews, and the other is word of mouth. If you can please leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as send this to 1 to 2 friends that you think would get value from it, we can reach the physicians that we want to reach. Thanks in advance, and talk to you on the next episode. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial or medical advice. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the host and the guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.